I'm Sean Rolls, and today we examine two things: democracy and politics. Whether you are politically disengaged, disinterested, or just never had the opportunity to really come to terms with these terms, here's that chance. First, let's talk about democracy, shall we? It's time for a little abbreviated history. Democracy isn't new. Over the centuries, it's meandered around like some derpy butterfly, just trying to figure out who it is and what it really stands for. And it often changes to fit the people in which it's being used. The system is flexible. So really, it's kind of like a chameleon trying to use camouflage. It'll change to fit the surroundings, and if all works out, it'll go completely unnoticed as a chameleon. So, it works best when it reflects the people. And thus, rule by the people. It's the actual word and what it means. And it takes many forms, from direct, where you get to vote for laws, or where you vote for your representatives, or you could take a look at one of its first forms, which is a whole bunch of old dudes who weren't slaves just rolling around in their togas. And then there's what we see today in the US, in a lot of developed countries, and then you also have countries like the UK that have they have a monarch though, but they still get to vote for their leaders, a whole bunch of things. But how do they really work if they come in so many different shapes and forms? They work by coming in very different shapes and forms. The Pacific has faced a mixed kind of history with the use of democracy. Some people have called it a foreign flower, saying that it's been implanted in the Pacific and it will never work. And some countries are a testament of that. But that's the thing, if you transplant something, it's not going to work. The only way democracy really works is when people are educated enough to be able to engage in a system that works to reflect the diversity of that country, the culture of that country itself. And the whole point of democracy is to overcome the fact that people want their own way. So democracy is kind of meant to allow for a system that lets other people have their own voices and give their own input and debate and talk about and discuss and work towards and finalize. And at the end of the day, if there's going to be legislation passed or a country is managed in a certain way, it has to be not necessarily all the time, but it is usually for the benefit of the people. Which is why when you elect representatives, you need to be educated about their party. The party has to be well formed. Or even if you're looking at individuals, it depends on the system. And the people need to be properly represented, especially if that's the system in which you're working in. And that's where a lot of the problems come into play. And that's where we talk about politics. I've studied this, and it was actually really, really interesting because, as my first teacher of politics, I guess, ever told me, that politics isn't just about government or national or local or international politics or any of that. Sometimes it's just an interaction between two people. And it's that interaction that gets us swayed and gets us to think about our representatives. Us picking a friend or even picking a partner is almost just like picking a representative in government. It's saying, I feel an affinity with this person, I agree with most of what they stand on, I feel like we have similar interests and like the same things, so I'm going to vote for them. When it doesn't work is when people politic it up and they appear to be one thing, but they're not that in practice. At the same time, there are people that are actually just not good at representing other people and are there for very selfish reasons. And I guess just like you have bad politicians, you're going to have maybe a bad friend or two, maybe a bad partner or two, but it's about keeping with the system, or at least having a system that allows you to stay with that and say, you know what, we need people that work for us. Because the whole idea of even like a civil service is about people serving civilians. And I believe politicians are supposed to be civil servants as well. So we'll be having a few more discussions about politics this month here on Femlink Pacific's YouTube page, and specifically on FemVids itself. We're going to be looking at one thing and another, but really what we want to look at is we're probably going to be looking at voting as well. We have a very interesting voting system coming up, especially in Fiji. But there are a couple of other elections coming up around the region, and we want to take a look at those contexts too. If you have any questions or want any clarifications about the rambling of this video, you can leave them on the Facebook pages, Femlink Pacific and FemVids, or you could just leave them in the comments here on YouTube. And really, I guess, what I would like to know from any viewers is, why do you want a democracy? Or if you don't even want a democracy, why not? There are a whole lot of other ways that countries have looked after themselves, a whole lot of systems. I mean, you have socialism, you had communism, there's also trying to juggle a democratic state with some welfare state policies, and, you know, there's a whole lot of ways that things can happen. So, what would you want in your government? Let me know. I've been Sean Rolls. You've been great. This has been another FemVid, and I'll see you next time.
Dum dum dum. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba. Subscribe. Subscribe. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-da. Da-da-ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da. Thank you for watching a FemVid.